Boker Tov B'Shem Kol Yisrael. We're going to continue our exploration of the daily Tfillos based on the insights of our wonderful sages. I'm using Taleley, Orot, and Rav Avraham Chaim Feuer's beautiful book Shmomeh Esreh to guide us, to give our second Bracha of the Shmomeh Esreh a little bit more meaning. So let's begin. B'Shem Kol Yisrael. May our Torah protect all of the Jewish people. Ata Gibor Li'olam Hashem. You are powerful. You're a Gibor. Forever, God. So the Mefarshim wonder, why do we have to say God is Gibor La'olam? We've never seen that phrase in the Tanakh. What are they exactly trying to stress when Chazal say God is forever powerful? So perhaps this is relating back to the Gemara in Yuma, which explains why the Anshe Knesset HaGdola were called the Gdola. What was so great about them? They restored the Gedula. They restored the greatness to the crown to Hashem. In other words, Daniel, when he's praising Hashem, takes out the word Gibor. Even though Moshe Rabbeinu referred to God as a Gibor, as powerful, Daniel says, look, I see the Jews in exile. Daniel lived in the exile, powerless. I saw the terrible destruction of the Beit HaMikdash of Yerushalayim. I'm an honest person. I just can't see God's Gevurot. I don't see His power. Came the Anshe Knesset HaGdola and said, no. Even though we can't see God's power, we know, we believe that God is all-powerful. And in what way is He manifesting His power? Because He really would like to destroy the enemies of His children, of the Jewish nation, immediately. He'd like to wipe them out. But He holds Himself back because He knows for the greater good of mankind, He needs to exercise self-restraint. Why is that for our greater good? We don't know. We know that Hashem has a plan. Perhaps we could suggest that, if God were to punish wrongdoers immediately, well, wrongdoers would have almost no free choice because they would immediately know not to do bad things, and then this world couldn't function, and then we can never earn the reward and do all the fixings and partner with Hashem like we're supposed to do. That's one suggestion, but at the end of the day, we don't know what God's plan is, but we believe that He's holding Himself back for the greater good. It's almost like when a person is insulted, and instead of lashing back, he waits, he uses that as springboard to propel him to do great things. Reminds me of the story of Lincoln, brought down by Dale Carnegie in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, how he wrote this scathing letter to his commander after his commander messed up big time. But he realized that if he were to send the letter, it would only derail his commander. So instead, he just put the letter away. He never gave it to the commander, so that way the commander could be successful. And indeed, ultimately, they did win the war. The North won the war. So sometimes God holds back. A true Gibor is someone who holds back for the greater good. So that's why Ata Gibor Li'olam. It might seem like God's not powerful when we see terrible things happen, but we believe that God is always powerful. For the world, He's powerful. Li'olam, no matter what. And perhaps Al Derech Drush, you could say, and that's why the next thing we talk about is Mechayim Eitim, that God brings the dead back to life. That even though we sometimes witness terrible things and people die, but we believe that there's a bigger picture going on here. At the end of the day, people will come back, and we don't see the full picture. It's fascinating to note that we stress so much this concept of Techiyat Hametim every day, 3 times a day. It's one of the 13 Ikarei Emunah, and Tfillah is one way which we strengthen our belief in this in Techiyat Hametim. And first of all, what is exactly supposed to happen, and why does that matter? So before we go on the Tfillah, just take a quick time out. So we don't know exactly what it's supposed to look like. It's predicted by the prophets, but some of the details as to what will be are unclear. For example, according to Rabbeinu Sadia Hagaon, not everyone is going to merit to come back at the end of days. Only believing Jews, those who believed in the resuscitation of the dead, they can come back. and Rambam seems to agree it's only for Jews, whereas the Abarbanel in his Sefer writes that all people are going to ultimately come back. So I guess we'll find out. But what's clear is that the dead bodies are going to come back and get reunited with their souls. And the Ramban, in his drasha on Gmul, on reward and punishment, explains that when the body dies, it kind of goes down to a seed, which will eventually get stronger and regrow in the end of days. And the soul goes up to Shmomeh, gets cleaned out, gets purified, gets strengthened by the light of Hashem, and ultimately the body and the soul will come back together in the end of days. And that itself, now that we understand a little bit what we're talking about, we understand that Judaism is about the bringing of the soul into the body, not just being spiritual, but bringing our spirituality into the physical world. That's our mission in the world. And of course, reiterating every day our belief in Techiyat Hametim reminds us that there are things, as Rav Alba writes, beyond nature. God controls the world, even the things which are beyond nature. And we believe in a God who can go beyond, a God of miracles, more than what we see. And we believe in justice. At the end of the day, even if we don't see physically that there is justice, we believe there is justice. We believe that there's a next world. There's more than meets the eye. So perhaps those are some of the concepts that we're reminding ourselves of every day. Anyways, let's go continue on in the words. Ata gibor olam Hashem, machayim eitim ata rav leoshia. You resuscitate the dead, you great to save. The phrase lehoshia is often associated in Tanakh with Techiyat Hametim, with bringing back the dead. So great in saving. It's interesting that we say the word ata a second time. We just said ata, and now again, we reiterate you. So perhaps the Chafetz Chaim explains this is reminding us of the Gemara in Tainus, which teaches that there's three keys which only Hashem himself holds on to. The key of Techiyat Hametim, of resuscitating the dead, the key of childbirth, and the key for rains. These are all aspects of resuscitation of the dead. And the Chafetz Chaim explains that it could be that al pi midat hadin, we don't deserve to be resuscitated, or we don't deserve rain, we don't deserve even childbirth, and the Malach HaMaves could have a taina. But Hashem himself takes the key because he knows there are times that he needs someone to be born, or he wants to look for a petach to resuscitate the dead. Maybe someone, wasn't exactly in the category of those who need to be resuscitated, but he'll find a way to open up the door to allow him to be resuscitated. So God himself has those keys, and this is why we stress the word ata. Okay, so God, you resuscitate the dead. In many ways, you find ways to save. Rav Yonif Tan Eibeshitz says there's another meaning behind Techiyat Hametim, because the Gemara teaches that when a person sins, he's considered dead. So when a person does tshuva, that's another form of resuscitation of the dead. And so this is another Rav Leoshia. God finds ways to allow people to do tshuva and to come back from the dead, so to speak. Okay, we continue on and we say Mashiva Ruach Merida Geshem. God, we praise you for bringing the wind and bringing down the rain. Apidrush, we're also davening Hashem, Mashiva Ruach, bring us back spirituality, Umarida Gashem, and lower our Gashmias. Oftentimes when a person puts an overstress on Gashmias, on physicality, on money, on food, on drink, on taivas, then he feels less of a taiva for spirituality. It's like if you fill up your cup with Gashmias, you won't have room for Ruchnias. So we're davening every day, please Hashem, fill me with Ruchnias. And maybe that's why we don't eat before we daven, and we want to fill up our cup with Ruchnias so that we know how to have Gashmias, sanctify it, and not let it overwhelm us. Anyway, that's drush. According to the simple pshat, we're praising God for bringing us rain. And as I mentioned, rain is an aspect of Techiyat Hametim in our daily lives. The Malam explains that Geshem is natural water that falls from the heaven, and Matar is rain that we ask for. So later in the Tain Bracha, where we ask for Tain Talam Matar, which is when we're asking for rain. In any case, The Gemara in Tainis, Daf Zayin, writes that Gadol Yom Techiyat, the grade of Yeridas Geshem, the day of rain, is even greater than Techiyat Hametim. The Techiyat Hametim is only for the tzaddikim. There's a concept that only the righteous will merit a full Techiyat Hametim, whereas rain is for everybody, and both the good and the bad. And in a way that it shows God's patience, that He's waiting for the Rishayim to do tshuva. Maybe that relates to what we were saying before. This is my insight, that Gevurot is when God holds Himself back, and that relates to rain, which is God gives rain for the good and the bad, and thus allowing the wicked to have a chance to do tshuva. In any case, so Mashiv Arach Umori de Geshem. Just yesterday we had our first rains here in Kiryat Arba, and I asked my friend between Mincha Marv to give a little shir, and he gave a shir about, do we say a bracha on the first rain? Do we say it without Shem Malchus? But when rain comes in Eretz Yisrael, it's a bracha. It's mamish taking dirt, which was dead, and it's bringing it back to life, and which is the source of food and source of all life. So sometimes we're disconnected to it in the modern world, but it certainly is worth praising God. Mashiv Arach Marei de Geshem every day. Mechalek al Chaim Chesed. He sustains life with kindness, even if we don't deserve it, relating back to what we were saying before, how even if a person sins, God gives them a chance to do tshuva, chesed. Or perhaps you could say He sustains life through kindness. When God's kindness actually gives us life, and we know when we're act with a smile and kindness towards others, we're actually giving them life. We're mamish giving them life. I'll just relate a story that I heard recently on that note. So there was a man, and he was in Switzerland, and he saw there was a family that was waiting outside, and they didn't have a hotel room, and he felt bad for them. Basically, they had checked out already. They didn't have money to pay for another room, and their cab was coming at 5 a.m. So he offered them to sleep in the room, but they didn't want it. And he said, I'm going to do a chesed. And he put his alarm clock on at 3 a.m, and he ended up running down and helping them schlep their bags to the cab. And a few months later, they got a letter from this family, and they said this act of chesed brought back life, because their daughter was actually thinking of marrying a non-Jew, because she was fed up with Judaism, but she was on the brink, she was thinking about it. And then when she saw that act of kindness that you did, it made her realize how special religious Jews are, and she decided to instead marry a religious Jew, and she was getting married. So you see the power of chesed, it can mamish bring back life. In any case, he brings back life, a second reference again to Techiyat Hametim, Berachamim Rabim, with great mercy. The Gemara in Shabbos says that in the end of days, we're going to come back, we're not going to come back naked, we're going to come back with clothing, showing God's great mercy for us, and giving our body a second chance to redeem itself. Rachamim Rabim. Somech noflim v'rofeh cholim umatir asirim. God, how do you express your gevurah? You lift up those who are fallen. Rofeh cholim, you heal those who are sick. Matir asirim, and you unbind those who are bound. Sometimes people think power is to, reign over others, but Hashem shows that true power is giving life to others. Some explain this is also a reference to giving birth, where God gives life back to the mom and opens up the womb and allows children to be born. So there's a hidden reference of the Techiyat Hametim of childbirth here. And he fulfills his faithful promise to those who are asleep. He's faithful to them in the schus of them being faithful to him. Right? If a person's Techiyat Hametim is dependent on their emunah, if a person believes in Techiyat Hametim, so then they're zoicha to Techiyat Hametim. So since they were faithful, God is faithful to them and faithful to their families, and will one day bring back to life. Of course, we're still in the middle of this war, and I'm still thinking about all of those friends of all of ours who died so valiantly, and the only consolation is that we know they're in a better place and they're going to come back at the end of the day. Bezrat Hashem. Gladstein points out that whenever we have this phrase Micha Mocha Bal Gevurot Umi Do Melach refers to Techiyat Hametim. Similarly, we find it by Kel Adam. That Umi Do Melach, who is similar to God, refers specifically to the aspect of God's bringing back Techiyat Hametim. Melech Meimit Umachaya Umatzmiach Yeshua, a God who kills and brings back life. Yes, we recognize that death is also from Hashem, but we also recognize at the end of the day He brings life into the world. This might be a hidden reference to the fact that when God kills one tzaddik, it says in the Gemara, when Rabbi Akiva died, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was born. So when one tzaddik passes away, a new tzaddik takes his place. God takes, God gives. And you are faithful to bring back the dead to life. Avraham says there's 3 references to Techiyat Hametim, referring to the first, when a person wakes up in the morning, that's Techiyat Hametim. Second, to childbirth. And third, to the resuscitation of the dead at the end of the day. Some note that there's actually 5 hidden references to Techiyat Hametim, and that alludes to the 5 parts of our soul, which are brought alive every time we learn Torah. And every time we daven with true sincerity, it brings back life into our soul. And when I say my Tfillah, I'm davening to Hashem often that He bring me back life, He bring me back energy, He bring me back spirituality, He bring me back chiyas, vitality. Bracha Hashem Hametim. You are the source of all blessing, the one who brings back the dead to life. Bezrat Hashem, and we zeicha to daven with extra kavanah, with extra tefillah. Hope you enjoyed this short summary of just to give us a little bit more kavanah. Certainly will help my kavanah. That's why I prepare this year, and I hope it will help yours too. Have a beautiful day.